What's up, everybody? It's JT Sports back, you guys, with another video. In this video, I'm here with my Denver Broncos 2019 training camp preview. Going to be previewing the Denver Broncos rosters. Going to be talking about some position battles to watch and some players to watch going into the Denver Broncos training camp in 2019. Now, before I begin, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Upload NFL videos and NFL content daily. The most in-depth NFL content analysis that you will find on YouTube. So, Denver Broncos. The first thing I want to talk about is the quarterback situation. So, apparently, it was an article that came out a few days ago, and it said that Kevin Hogan is actually giving Drew Lock a battle for that number 2 quarterback position. Now, I was not expecting this. A lot of people was expecting Drew Lock to be the backup quarterback to Joe Flacco and maybe potentially end up dethroning Joe Flacco somewhere through the season or being the future quarterback of the Denver Broncos in the next couple of years. But Kevin Hogan is actually developed into a pretty okay quarterback to be a pretty good backup quarterback. And right now, he's actually ahead of Drew Lock for that backup quarterback spot for the Denver Broncos. So this is going to be very interesting seeing how that quarterback battle unfolds for the Denver Broncos, because that backup quarterback spot is going to be very, very pivotal in case Joe Flacco ends up not playing that good or something like that happens. So I'm going to be watching how that quarterback battle or that quarterback battle for the number 2 backup quarterback spot ends up shaping out, because that's going to be very interesting, because Drew Lock was a second round pick in this year's NFL draft. The Denver Broncos traded back into the second round to end up drafting him. Big arm guy, but struggles with accuracy. Footwork needs a lot of improvement as well. Kevin Hogan is a guy who has some experience, started a few games at the NFL level, so obviously the experience is there. But ultimately, it's going to be really interesting seeing how that backup quarterback competition ends up shaking out. I wasn't expecting this at all. I thought Drew Lock was pretty much a lock to be the backup quarterback for the Denver Broncos, but Kevin Hogan is starting to make some competition out of it. So I'm really going to be excited about seeing how that unfolds when the Denver Broncos begin their training camp and how that battle shapes up into the preseason. Next up, I want to talk about their tight end group, because they have a lot of tight ends on their roster. You got Noah Fant, who they drafted in the first round of this year's NFL draft. Then you got Jeff Heuerman. You got Troy Famagali, you got Jake Budd, and you got Austin Fort. Now, a lot of these tight ends are very talented, but struggle staying on the field, especially Jake Budd. Jake Budd is basically like a piece of glass. You touch him one time or tackle him one time, and then he goes down and he's injured. So Noah Fant's going to be their starting tight end regardless. And then who's going to be that second tight end? That's something else that I'm going to be looking forward to watching now, because tight end is very, very important when you have a quarterback like Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco targets his tight ends heavily. He targets his tight ends often. So it's very, very important that we keep an eye on this tight end competition throughout training camp. We know Noah Fant is going to be the number 1 guy, but who's going to be that second tight end if the Denver Broncos run 2 tight end sets this season? So that tight end position is going to be really, really important. During his time in Baltimore drafted a lot of tight ends, also signed a lot of tight ends to free agency as well, because Joe Flacco, he targets tight ends a lot, like I said earlier. So it's going to be pivotal that we see how this tight end battle is going to shape up and who's going to be the second guy behind Noah Fant on the Denver Broncos tight end depth chart. Next up, I want to talk about the wide receiver position. I'm not going to get too heavily in it. We got Cortland Sutton, Emmanuel Sanders. He's coming back from an injury. You got Deshaun Helbington, who I'm going to be watching very, very closely, because I think he has a lot of potential. I think a lot of people are sleeping on him. You got River Craft. You got Juwan Winfrey as well. So it's going to be interesting seeing how that ends up shaping up at the wide receiver position there. Next, I'm going to spend a couple of minutes talking about the halfback position, because I think this halfback position is pretty interesting. So you got Philip Lindsay, who was one of the biggest stories in the 2018 NFL season. He was an undrafted free agent out of Colorado, made the Denver Broncos roster, ended up being their lead halfback once we got near the midway point of the season. But I think a guy that a lot of people shouldn't sleep on is Royce Freeman. Now, for those of you guys who don't remember, I was talking about Royce Freeman earlier around this time last year when I was doing my Denver Broncos 2018 training camp preview. And I think that Royce Freeman still has a lot of potential. He wasn't really that bad this season. The thing that killed him down the stretch was that he ended up getting injured. I forgot what week it was, but he got injured. And when he got injured, Philip Lindsay took advantage of that, and he ended up running away with the halfback competition. But don't sleep on Royce Freeman. Royce Freeman was very solid last season. Like I said earlier, if he never got injured, nobody really knows how the Denver Broncos halfback position would have shaped up. Philip Lindsay, he still might have ended up becoming the lead back, but Royce Freeman, if he was able to stay healthy, it would have been pretty interesting seeing how that unfolded, because Royce Freeman was pretty solid last year. Although his stats might not knock you off your socks when you look at it, he was pretty solid last year when he ended up being that second back behind Philip Lindsay. Then you got Devontae Booker there. Devontae Booker, very interesting. Very good at breaking tackles and stuff like that. So it's going to be interesting how he ends up, what his role is going to be in this halfback group behind Philip Lindsay and Royce Freeman. But ultimately, I think he's going to end up being the odd man out. I think Philip Lindsay is going to end up being the guy who gets the workload, and then Royce Freeman is going to be the guy who comes in and gives Philip Lindsay a break. Philip Lindsay, he can do a lot. He's a very good pass catcher out of the backfield as well. He can do a lot. He's going to be the centerpiece of this Denver Broncos offense without a doubt. But I just think a lot of people are overlooking Royce Freeman. So Royce Freeman is a guy who people should keep their eyes on. So next up, we want to move on to the defense side of the ball. We have some interesting position battles when we get to the defense side of the ball. First, I want to talk about who's going to end up starting at that defensive end position between Derek Wolfe and Zach Kerr. Now, I think Derek Wolfe could end up be competing for his starting job this training camp just because his production has kind of went down the last couple of seasons, and he wasn't really that good last season as well. He's also up there in age, so I think Zach Kerr could end up giving Derek Wolfe some competition there at that defensive end position. Next up, we're going to move to the linebacker. So we got Hosey, Joel, and Joseph Jones. Now, that linebacker position is going to be really important. Linebacker is really, really important because Denver, when it was very good, when their defense was very good, they always had a very solid group of linebackers. So it's very important that they end up finding out who's going to be those next guys to step up and actually have some solid production at that linebacker position. They had Brandon Marshall. They let him go. Brandon Marshall, his play kind of deteriorated the last couple of seasons. So it's going to be interesting who starts at that linebacker position. Next up, I want to talk about the safety. So Justin Simmons, according to Pro Football Focus, wasn't really that good last season. He was graded out by Pro Football Focus as the 73rd worst safety in the NFL. Also had a 60.9 grade, which wasn't good at all. Then you got Sua Cravens there. He wasn't even better. He had a 37.4 overall grade by Pro Football Focus last season in 2018. So it's going to be really interesting seeing who ends up starting at that safety position. Both guys have a lot of potential. I really like Sua Cravens a lot. I thought he would have had a bigger role on this Denver defense last season, but we didn't really see a lot of him last season. So it's going to be interesting seeing who's going to end up starting at safety for the Denver Broncos week 1. Now I'm going to talk about my players to watch for the Denver Broncos when their training camp begins in 2019. Drew Lock, I'm really intrigued with Drew Lock just because for the fact that I wasn't really high on Drew Lock. I thought his ceiling was more of a Jake Cutler-like quarterback. A little bit streaky, has some good games, has some terrible performances. Wasn't really consistent during his time playing for Missouri. So I was really interested when the Denver Broncos ended up drafting him because they got Joe Flacco. And now reading reports about how Kevin Hogan is starting to make competition of this backup quarterback battle. It's going to be interesting seeing how Drew Lock handles that throughout training camp. I mean, obviously he has the arm, but is he going to develop more when it comes to his footwork, being able to stay in the pocket, make accurate throws, being accurate under pressure, reading defenses, which is all a lot of things that he struggled with during his time in college. And next, I'm going to talk about Royce Freeman. Royce Freeman was a guy who I was really high on last season. When he started out, he wasn't really that bad. He was pretty solid, but like I said, he ended up getting injured. Philip Lindsay ended up taking advantage, and that was that, and ran away with the competition. But I think Royce Freeman is a pretty solid backup behind a guy like Philip Lindsay. Then you got Noah Fant there. I'm always going to keep my eyes on any first round pick because I just want to see how they end up doing, how they end up progressing throughout training camp until week 1. Then I got to talk about Courtland Sutton. Courtland Sutton is a guy who I'm really intrigued in. Last year, I thought he was one of the best receivers in last year's draft class, and he had a pretty productive rookie season. So how is he going to do in training camp with a better quarterback, with a guy like a Joe Flacco, who is an upgrade from Case Keenum? Not a big upgrade, but just a little bit of an upgrade. And the last player is Joe Flacco, because Joe Flacco now with a new team, new organization, new head coach, new regime up there in Denver, is going to be interesting seeing what he does in training camp for the Denver Broncos as well. So this is it for this video. Let me know what you guys think about it down in the comment section down below. What are some things that you guys are going to be watching and looking for when the Denver Broncos begin their mini camp? Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more NFL videos and content. And thanks for watching.